This is Pankaj Gupta from EthAum Venture Partners. We are excited to host this panel on evolution of digital banking today with Brdgx and some exciting panelists from Southeast Asia and India. Why we are talking about evolution of digital banking. And I have a very interesting story to talk about. A few years back, when I was trying to open a corporate bank account for EthAum, I was going to a traditional bank because it was highly recommended. After trying all the documents multiple times, after visiting the branch multiple times, I could not get the bank account open in 3 weeks. That's the time that it took. Even after opening the bank account, making transactions, especially overseas transactions, was extremely painful. The charges, the time, the back and forth document requirement was just too much. And then I came to know about a digital bank, Aspire. Interestingly, Thomas is also from Aspire. And after that, I started banking with Aspire. And after that, I never looked back. And now when I look at traditional banks versus digital banks, I feel there's so much innovation which these digital banks are bringing. And traditional banks, if they don't innovate, if they don't evolve at the speed with which digital banks are evolving, then there could be a problem for them. And I'm a huge supporter of digital banking, of open banking. And that's the reason that we recently onboarded Brdgx in our portfolio in January 2023. Brdgx is a startup from Hong Kong, which is making these cross-border payments extremely efficient. And we have Donald with us on the call. He is going to ask some really exciting questions to a diverse panel, and obviously he will also get feedback on his solution from the panelists. Now, without further delay, I would request Donald to do a brief intro of Brdgx, and then I'll move on to our panelists to do an introduction of themselves. Donald, please.
Thank you, Pankaj. My name is Donald. I'm the co-founder for Brdgx. Brdgx simplifies payments in Asia, and in terms of both payments and payment collection. We provide a digital treasury network that empowers business to be able to make use of our unified payment infrastructure to access markets like Southeast Asia, Greater China, and beyond that. So today, I'm very happy to be hosting a conversation with all the market experts in digital banking today, and to have a conversation to update everybody.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Donald. Thomas?
Hi, everyone. I'm Thomas. I'm a general manager at Aspire. Thank you for that shout out earlier, Pankaj. So Aspire provides banking services, corporate cards, and other financial tools to startups and small and medium enterprises throughout Southeast Asia and throughout the world. So if you are ever in need of a bank account, do look us up.
Thank you, Thomas. Samir?
Thanks, Pankaj. I'm Samir. I don't know how to succinctly put this, but I've been in Asia Pacific, and lucky enough, I've been part of several transformations for the last 2 decades. So be it incumbent banks or be it the new banks like Aspire. I've spoken with Thomas on the phone a couple of times, so I've seen the growth of Aspire, but being part of these so many transformations that have taken place, it's just the knowledge and it's just the know-how, and that's what I bring to the table out here. At the moment, I'm working very closely with Synchron, which is the digital transformation organization that actually just transforms banks right from front to back. So, but I've spoken in a lot of sessions. I'm a good public speaker. I talk a lot about inclusion, and that's my passion. And I can talk about it for hours.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Samir. And just so everybody knows, Samir is a very well-known and respected name in the banking financial services industry in Asia Pacific. So if you want to connect with anybody, and I'm sorry, Samir, if that brings trouble for you, if you want to connect with anybody, just let Samir know.
It's always a pleasure.
I'm sure he will have connections.
It's always a pleasure to speak one-on-one. People just need to reach out.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Samir. Christian, please unmute yourself.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Pankaj. Thank you, Donald. I'm Christian Lesmana. I'm the head of lending business for Dana Indonesia. I just moved to this great organization. Before that, I was the head of card business and consumer lending for HSBC Indonesia. So I'm part of the old school people from the conventional financial institution, if you may call it like that. And now I'm trying new things in this new fintech organization, right? So I have experienced myself from these two worlds and trying to take the best from these two worlds. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, Christian. I'm sure you will
Thank
have
you.
a lot of insights to share today. Looking forward to that. Nathan?
Thank you.
Morning, everyone. I'm working in Yes Bank as an SVP. I'm part of the digital banking CS team, but I look after the government sector vertical pan-India basis. So as part of my portfolio, I try and identify most of the digitizing opportunities within the government sector, which is everybody would know is need of the hour. So uphill task, but interesting, and I take care of that. I'm based out of
Thanks a lot, Nathan. And I'm sure that you will be able to share a lot of insights from the Indian ecosystem, because the way Indian payment financial services industry has been evolving is just crazy. It's mind-boggling. So thanks a lot for that. Okay, Donald, let's see what kind of interesting questions you got for our panel.
Thank you very much. I think, we really, with all the experts here, we really started off, on a journey whereby we are talking about fintech. We just look at not too long ago, fintech was a buzzword, but now fintech is fintech. Everybody know what fintech is about, is financial technologies. But now today's topic is really about digital banking. But again, digital banking by itself, the word has also evolved, because most, I would say, in the region that we're working in, where there's consumer, where there's corporate, they already kind of know, okay, digital banking is almost like a given at this point of time. So, but today we have both the banks and the non-banks here on the conversation today. And I would like to start off really with, some questions or some understanding on how the landscape has been evolving for digital banking. What exactly it is about, in a post-COVID environment, and what digital banking is about to either the consumers, the individuals, or the corporates. I would start off with, questions going to the neobanks or the non-banks as a start, because we are in the same space in the tech side. But it will be interesting to hear, from, let's say, Thomas from Aspire, to hear a little bit about what the solution is about, how we are bringing in, new ideas, new products or solutions to the market, with the digital banking as a topic.
Sure. So I think it's an interesting topic, right? Because even the traditional banks, to a certain extent, are starting to portray themselves as not banks. If we look at DBS's slogan, bank less, live more, I think it does get to this idea that people would rather not spend their time wrestling with their bank just to try to get something done. And that idea has a lot of resonance. For us, though, at Aspire, I mean, we definitely see that need as well. And as Pankaj was mentioning earlier, we basically got our business started by being easier to work with than the traditional banks in many ways. What we're starting to see now for ourselves, as well as for the rest of the industry, is that it's not enough just to be easy. Being easy and being streamlined is basically table stakes at this point. And there will always be some things that are a bit harder to do than others due to different policies across countries, due to regulations. Certain industries are just, and I think, inherently harder to work with as well. But as we ourselves try to evolve into the next stage, we're not just looking at being easy. We actually are trying to actively make our clients better at their jobs as well. And so on top of the base of fundamental financial services that we're building with partners like Brdgx, we also are trying to build out the workflow tools that make it easier for a finance team member or for someone on the business side to make better decisions, to manage spend and finances more responsibly, all the while we're getting their job done. And if you ask me, really what's coming next for the fintech ecosystem overall is probably more of this. It's not just about getting that particular transaction done, but it is how you inform your overall business with financial tools, being more of a partner to the business, and on the consumer level, being more about supporting individuals in their own journey and in their own tasks as well.
Thank you, Thomas. I will move to Christian from Dana. I mean, we know Dana is basically one of the largest and the most well-known wallet in Indonesia. From your perspective, we are both in the payment service space and not exactly a bank, but as a wallet, people kind of look at it, digital bank, digital wallet, as a consumer or even as a business, it's the same thing. But what are we really doing, in the market that makes it different, and how are you actually working, with both consumers or the businesses as the largest wallet in Indonesia?
Thank you, Donald. So maybe let me start with my own pain points from my previous life as a banker, right? So we all in some of our time, maybe most of us are bankers as well, right? So when I try to do consumer lending, cards, loan, and all sorts of things, right? I think India, Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines more or less have the same environment, right? Despite of the outside the regulatory framework and all that one a little bit different, of course. But other than that, it's the same, right? Our biggest pain points, one of it is on the customer acquisitions, right? Two things on customer acquisition. We want to have a scale up very fast, but at the decent cost as well. We don't want to get free or cheap or whatever, but at least the cost to acquire has to make sense, right? Now, that is where I'm struggling, right? I remember even when we want to get to 1 million customer, it's a 5 years long journey and we never get there. We just do things conventionally. Right, so in Dana Indonesia, we already have 135 million registered customers. Right now, if you quantify that against the total adult population in Indonesia, we are already 80% of the total adult population in Indonesia. Right now, I don't want to brag about the Dana Indonesia here, but back to your question again, Donald, I think one of the pain points and also going to be one of the game changer is playing by ecosystem, strategic partnership, right? If we already have found an organization whereby they already have 100 million customers, why don't we just work with them, right? And forget about the customer acquisition pain points. Forget about the, you have to hunt your customer in malls. You have to, in every quarter, you establish, that events in the malls and all that, you have millions of customers already, right? And we can establish a journey whereby it's literally one-click process, KYC pass on from the e-wallet or from the partners to the bank or to the FI, right? And we can have the scale up at the very decent cost, right? So that's what we are doing here right now, Donald.
That's very good to know because it's important for us to we are based in Singapore, but Southeast Asia is after all a big market, but each jurisdiction or each location has its own regulation, has its own nuances. It's really about how we can come in together to adopt or adapt a certain framework and solution. Now, I would like to move the topic, with the similar idea to the banks, both Yes Bank as well as DBS. How I mentioned earlier on, just a while back, even before COVID, for example, it's always about a topic about the banks versus the fintech. But by now we all know that basically whether we are in the payment side, we are in the fintech side, we are still, after all, relying on the bank's infrastructure to provide us the support that we need as a solution. Now, the question is, with the changing landscape and the environment that's moving, whether it is things related to regulation and so on and so forth. So banks increasingly are being I would say, looked after or being sought after to kind of, as the bridge between both the regulators and the fintechs. And how do you see this relationship is evolving, from, let's say, Yes Bank's perspective, and how, potentially a fintech can work better with the bank to provide better solutions?
Well, to start my answer, I mean, what Pankaj said, was right. India has been at the cusp of, digital transformation in all walks of life. Financial services is not unknown to that as well. So, see, India has had fintech stories not as recent, but has been decades old. You know, 15, 20 years ago, I mean, the scenario was the banks ruled the entire financial services space. With the advent of fintech companies, there was a lot of criticism and pushback. But eventually, I would not name the bank, but a couple of banks started this journey. They understood this space very well, and they said, hey, these companies can do a job better than we can, right? So, and that's where the fusion of formal banks and fintech started in India. And the journey started with hackathons, with the try and test methods, pilots, and now, as you all know, that fintech has taken the landscape with huge. So, India is home to many unicorns, and talk about lending or new banks. We have a lot of new banks, each catering to each and every sector. So most of the banks, including Yes Bank, we have dedicated teams. I'm part of one, which primarily focuses on the fintech sector, where we are on a continuous outlook of for identifying opportunities or the challenges in the market, which we can solve more proactively and with these costs, as Krishna mentioned as well. And what is the fastest time to market? As legacy banks, banks have their own issues. So we are always on the lookout with fintechs. We collaborate with them. And Yes Bank, if you know, in India, Yes Bank has been and still the preferred choice for most of the fintech companies to partner. So that's where we are right now.
Thank you, Nitin. And moving to Samir, you're the expert, in the market, on having the crystal ball, with analytics. We would like to look at you, to get more insights, right, on how do you see over the past few years, whether it's consumer sector, and now we're talking about overall, let's say, consumer behavior or user behavior. How is it evolving so far based on from a DBS viewpoint, or from your viewpoint, how things are being adopted by users, from a digital banking side of things?
So I think if you look at the banks and the services that are being made available to the consumer or to the merchant, and Aspire is itself a very good example of it. I think the usability part of it, people are getting comfortable, but I'd take a step back and say that there is not adequate knowledge. We talk about it in our forums, fintech forums, and we talk about innovation. We talk about how life gets easier and how the digital banks really can provide at least a niche better service than the incumbent bank in some service cases. But I think that kind of knowledge is not being translated to the end user. So what does that mean really? I think that really what it means is that while people are aware that digital banks are making a huge difference, it also means that it's only a limited few, and it's a percentile of that market that is aware of being able to open accounts. Now, prior to you asking me this question, I heard carefully answers that were given by Thomas and others. And, I think we spoke about acquisition, right? Customer acquisition. So we talk about quality, or we talk about let's not compromise on quality. I think what we really need to be thinking about is how do we get customers really quickly and fast and scale? And that's the objective. But the how of it from a technology architecture perspective is really not very well understood. I think from a marketing language, it's understood that we've got to acquire customers. We would, and there are different schemes out there in the market. But really, it's the education that would help people to understand. So I'll give you an example. Can you onboard a customer who's probably a profile of 16 years old, and she is a student in a school? Can you onboard her quickly? How would you do that? How would you sense? How would you get that data? And what I'm saying is that there, as technology experts and as bankers, we already are aware that there's tons of data out there. There's tons of data that cannot be understood, but you can pick up this information and quickly onboard, a different kind of segments within consumer and merchants and make the process easier for them. It is difficult for merchants to open a business and then wait for 3 months to open an account. You make that process easy because you pick up data of who are the owners of the company. And this data is basically comes to collaboration. So to me, fintechs, incumbent banks, and regulators have to really start working together. India is a fantastic example of this, where regulation has been clearly market-driven. It's not mandated by the RBI to go out and these are the parameters, these are the rules. They've done those rule books, but it's not like what Europe did in terms of GDPR and in terms of PSD2 and so on, right? So those frameworks either are regulatory driven or market driven. I'm not balancing the two. All I'm saying is that whichever approach you take, you got to start collaborating a lot, and that was spoken about. We need to look at different API companies. What is the API stack? How can I make payments easier? How can I onboard a 16-year-old who probably lives with her mother, and her mother works for a multinational company, has a, so because IC numbers, national identities, that data all can be picked up. So sharing of data is important. I think if we start looking at those aspects and step a little away from customer experience, we would be able to, at a point of checkout of any e-commerce site, make banking services available. So you could partner as a bank and underwrite or make that purchase, offer credit. You could do several things. So to answer your question, I think the adoption is growing, the knowledge is growing, but I think we could have done better. We can still do better in Asia Pacific, given the penetration of internet, given the penetration of mobile devices, given that people are kind of aware, some advertisements here and there, they're kind of aware. But how do we quickly make that process simpler by just working together as a cohort? I think that is powerful. And I think that would kind of solve those problems, make digital banks more popular, and it's also strategy. At the end of the day, digital banks also need to look at what problem they're trying to solve. So if it's a payments problem, or if it's I don't have, I don't want to go through a lot of paperwork to just get onboarded in a CASA account. So I might as well just open a wallet, because I'll use this to store some value and make some purchases, payments on that. So that thought process, and all of us working together and trying and creating that awareness and getting this information out there of how it's, how working together can create specific, can solve certain problems, specific problems that I see. That's what's happening. I just felt that it would go at a faster pace, given that, Singapore issued licenses, Malaysia did that, Hong Kong did that, digital banks in Indonesia, Philippines. I thought that journey, and I'm not talking about, one could say that banks have onboarded 2 million customers in a matter of a certain period. It's not that. It's just trying to make it more usable, and I think customer service and some awareness around that would be really good to see, which will enable digital banks to have that edge over incumbents.
Thank you very much, Samir. I would like to bring a general topic to all the panelists here. Talking about technology adoption, talking about innovation. I mean, the hot topic now, right, is about AI and blockchain. By the way, this is not hot topic right now. I mean, it's been many years actually already, few years. And we have moved on beyond just AI to generative AI. We have moved on from blockchain to now Web3. So now that both this term has created both basically new product opportunity as well as market segment opportunity. So from this perspective, if I were to go back to Aspire to Thomas to really understand how does the adoption or this kind of from a market or from a product perspective, whether it's generative AI, whether it's about Web3, has been changing in terms of how you're interacting with clients or the way that you can basically bring in the new values to clients.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting speculative exercise, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of things happening in the next few years that I'm not touching on successfully. Frankly, if I were able to forecast the future, I should probably go into venture capital instead of being an operator at this point. But there's a few things that come to mind, right? And if I think about the customer experience, as our colleagues on the line here have been discussing, in my mind, there's kind of at least two parts of the customer journey that can be significantly improved through the use of AI or blockchain technologies. The first piece is customer onboarding, which tends to be, honestly, usually the most painful part of financial services or using financial services for many customers that are out there. And that's definitely true, especially for customers of nationalities that may not be represented within a given country for whom there isn't a lot of data. A second piece is going to be in transaction monitoring and AML type situations, where there's often a lot of false positives, but also a lot of false negatives when it comes to compliance. And so generally my observation is, especially for fintechs that are out there, we generally don't have armies of compliance people. We don't have armies of AML, KYC people. And even if we do, it's kind of defeats the purpose of being a fintech in that you're basically just using decades old manual processes to do things, right? And so we are trying to advance the conversation and trying to evolve financial service in the direction of making things more seamless, more easy to use for customers so they can just kind of get on with their lives and do their business. I would say those are two areas where there's a lot of room for improvement in applying these technologies, and especially in applying machine learning to identify actual issues in KYC and avoid flagging issues that are not true issues, and so on.
Thank you. How about Christian? How do you see the adoption of the technology, and from your perspective, how is it improving or changing the products or the market segment that you're looking at?
Thanks, Donald. So I want to pick up that one topic as well that Samir and Thomas also point out, right? On the customer acquisition, back to that one again, right? So I've been doing sales role as well for more than 10 years, right? And come to this conclusion on sales, that sales should not be about convincing, but it should be about helping people. You don't have to convince people, you just need to help people. Now, how am I going to do that with all these digital technologies, AI, ML, and all that, right? So I remember during my bank time, right? I want to help my customers. First, I need to understand who is my customer. Then you go and do that persona study, right? You have 5, 6 persona, king, queen, millennials, mature adult, right? Then how many of them? What's the universe, right? What's our approach for each of the persona, right? Then come to the next question. Where is this customer, right? I remember during the COVID time, right? Usually we can find them in malls. Then during COVID, they are no longer in malls, right? Where are they, right? They are online. They do Zoom. They are on Spotify. They're on YouTube and all that, right? So I know who I want to help. I know who is my customer. I know their persona. I know where I can find them. Then I will try to spend money to be able to get them, right? Then even after I advertise on Facebook, IG, YouTube, I try to find the best time to interrupt them and all that, right? The next golden question, how do I able to get their attention, right? Then I spend another money, another time, another resources to be able to get their attention, right? Then we start tracking that, waterfall friction. How many impression, how many open, how many click, how many conversion. After conversion, after they register, how many usage and all that, right? Then we get that 0.0 something percentage end-to-end conversion and all that. So it's very painful. Now back to Donald's question again, right? How are we going to leverage these technologies, right? So once we understand the persona and the customer that we want, I think the next question is, are we really able to use this technology to be able to understand this customer truly? Like I'm talking about customer, I talk about like I'm knowing my wife, right? I really know what she wants. I really know what she don't like. I really know, at right now 2 p.m. Jakarta time, what is she doing right now, more or less, right? And if I want to get her attention, when can I get the best time, the best place, the best environment to do that, right? And if I have a suitable product for her, how do I able to present it to her, right? I think even now and in the near future, right, this AI, ML technologies, data science, right, will be able to help us to understand our customer better, right? And I think one of the next evolution is on the hyper personalization. After we understand all that, how can we really able to articulate and present our technologies to help customer with our products, right? As good as we know our own spouse. That's from me.
I like that. We're talking about our spouse. We're really talking about nowadays. Probably we know our mobile phone better than our spouse sometimes. but to Nitin,
Can I add just one point to just to, because we're in,
sure, go ahead.
In that space of in our minds from knowing the customer or knowing who to onboard and so on, right? I think, yes, I did say that, there is lots of data available in different silos, either with the banks or with regulators or with government databases and so on and so forth. So one could pick up all that data. Now, why I bring this point and why I want to make it important today is just let's look at the mobile phone. So when the mobile phone came out into the market, and mobile banking probably would have taken about 6 years or 8 years to be made available for people to use. That kind of time is gone now. In the tech world, in the VC world, that kind of time is gone. And just to give you an example, you have ChatGPT, right? It was launched, it came into the news report, when it was announced in the news, was about 2 weeks later, it was up on Twitter. And it had the fastest acquisition of users and fastest acquisition of paid users than what TikTok had. Now, how is that thought process relevant today? There is data, there are technologies. These technologies are really moving at a fast pace. You have 3 in a matter of 2 weeks becoming ChatGPT 4.5. So we as bankers, and when Thomas used the term, we don't want to become a legacy bank and have 100 people in the compliance room sitting and auditing and looking for KYC transactions, monitoring all that. You need technology solutions out there. And I think those solutions are there in silos, and they have to be fetched. They have to be given an opportunity. So that kind of a forum where you can kind of bring those technologies out and start thinking a little more faster. I think, do I need to do KYC check? Does this person fit? That is an old school of thought. We still think it. I'm not minimizing that thought process. That's very important. We've seen the banking world. We've worked with banks, and we've seen how important it is. But looking at technology and from a technology perspective, then from a fintech perspective, I just don't need data to onboard. I need to make that data make me money. So how do I monetize that data? So have conversations around data monetization. How can one do that? And how can one do that within the realms of either consumer banking or merchant banking or payment services? And also I can storyboard you exactly how you would be able to become at a point of sale or a point of interest perspective on a web browser or a mobile app. Aspire or any bank could actually, or a payment company could actually get in there and acquire the client for that transaction, do a verification quickly with all the data sources, and then then actually make the customer feel that you are part of their journey, and the customer becomes sticky. Because it's happened to me. I mean, I've used an app and suddenly I saw something, and then I said, hey, look, these guys look good. I should register with them, because it just made the whole process so simpler. And I scouted, I kind of looked into it. Because I'm from the industry and a technologist, it intrigued me and it caught my attention. But I'm just saying that a layperson would also be very quickly enthused and would get into it. So those were my thoughts around acquisition and of course KYC and all that stuff. Technology can solve those problems. We just need to figure out how we need to plug these technologies, and that comes only through collaboration, conversation, and creating that awareness. Sorry, Donald.
Thank you. I mean, this is actually very insightful too, because talk about the mobile era, right? I mean, it has kind of accelerated things so much, and now you talk about GPT, for example. I think I really think that the bots themselves are self-generating, and that's going to really accelerate things even much faster. It's going to change both the way that basically a user interact with machines, as well as at the same time, on the compliance side, I mean, probably there are chances that both the user side of things as well as the compliance thing can be resolved together. But I would like to bring it to Nitin from the perspective of Yes Bank or India. How do you look at it, from your bank's perspective and from your community's perspective on these adoptions?
Well, I second what the panelists are saying. The 360 view of the customer is very important. Once you acquire the customer, it's very important to hold the customer, have him transacting with you more and more. And well, before I go ahead, I'd just like to add to what Tom's was saying. There are two aspects to the customer's interaction with the bank or a fintech per se. I'd add, there are two more aspects to that. Not just the onboarding piece of it and having her transact it. Rather, the third important piece is, the exit. While we talk about acquisition, we don't talk about the exit, and this is a very early truth for everybody. Till today, it's not easy to exit a bank or a fintech per se. You still got to be physical. You got to have a physical interaction with it, right, to exit, formally exit from that system. And I think that part of the process still needs to be digitized. I don't think that is happening anytime soon, because none of them are talking. That is one. And the second is, where the 360-degree view comes in. The customer interacts with an institution for a very specific, one or two specific requirements. But having the 360-degree view, like Krishna was saying,
Nitin, I think we lost you. Can we take?
Okay, I think we would we'll wait for Nitin to come back, but I will also basically want to come back to on the topic. Nitin, are you able to hear us?
Sorry for that. Yes, I can. Can you hear
We
me?
are good with you now. Please continue. Thank you.
So apologies for that. So what I was saying is, as Christian was saying, scrubbing the social media, and as Sunny were also saying, having an idea about the customer. That is very important, and I think that is another missing piece in most of the companies. If I that's my personal view, but in Yes Bank as well, we're trying to build that capability in-house as well. So COVID has taught not just us, everybody a different lesson. The work can go on, people can transact, you can still onboard customers while sitting at home, the use of technology, right? So, and I think with that lesson, we are working on that to get it 362. We've launched certain solutions. AI/ML has become a de facto part of our lives. We've used them in all communication channels with the customer. We've also built in the rewards program. We've got different touch points with the customer. We're trying to get the data, feed that into the system, and see what the customer really wants and how long we can have the customer stick with us and do more transactions. So that is where we are. And I think most of the Indian sector, there's a underlying, always a competition between the banks and the fintechs to acquire more and more customers to get the larger pie of the market, the revenue share and all that. But I think everybody will understand, holding the customer is important, and that will be, as Sunny said, technology will lead the way. The fintechs, I don't have any shame in admitting that, fintechs have actually changed the perception how an organization views the customer, and parallelly how a customer views the organization, right? So historically, it had always been, this is the service that I offer, want to take it or leave it, right? But with the advent of so many tools and technologies, the customer has the ultimately the power to select, his or her idea of identifying, selecting a service and consuming the service has changed a lot. So I think that is where we need to focus more on. And I think once we do that, we'll have the customer for years at least with us.
Thank you very much. I think to round it up on this particular session, I think everyone understands basically the technology has been evolving. Where we really want to bring into the picture is to really understand from different market segments or different products and or different type of behavior to really see how we can actually make use of technology to be more collaborative. In this case, and earlier on, so my apologies. Samir is actually from Code Base, and because so we were supposed to have two Samir on the call, and I apologize for making the mistake. Now, I would Prakash, do we have still a bit of time for one more question?
We can take one more question. Yeah.
Yeah. Talking about customization and localization, one topic that we have is that, for example, we're talking about, overall in digital banking is really about a few things, right? It's really about the ease of use of banking services, whether it's from financing to payment to cash management. But the behavior actually from a user or from a consumer, from businesses are different. Some locations use much more card-based solution, where there's credit cards, for example, and some locations are more used to, a B2B or direct to bank type of solution on financing. So if I were to bring that to Christian to see basically how does it look like, in terms of this kind of products or user journey that you're seeing from Dana's perspective.
Thank you, Donald. So maybe I sidewind a little bit on understanding our customers first, right? And let me use my market, my country as an example, right? So Indonesia has 280 million population, right? Of that, adult population around 160, 180 million, right? Now, interesting thing is, I'm sure it's more or less similar demography in India as well. The average age is around 30 years old, right? And we are expecting for the next 10 years, this 20 years old something is going to be the next 30 years or something, and 30 will become 40, right? So 70%, 80% of the population will be around 20 to 30 plus years old, right? Now, this is a generation, 80% of our customer, of our potential customer, is a generation of native digital. What I meant with that is, I'm sure everybody understand, is they want instant. Everything has to be instant, right? Not just easy, not just fast. Fast is not enough. Instant, right? Has to be. And during my time as a banker, I'm still asking my customer, what's your mother's maiden name? What's your office address, right? And when I ask this question to my daughter, right, my daughter say, Papi, are you still remember your office phone number? I just realized I don't remember, right? And when they ask me about my office address, I Google it first, right? And it's so, I'm so annoyed with that. Me as a customer, right? Don't talk about my daughter, which is the younger generation, right? So not just fast, but also instant, right? The second one is trusted, right? Why I'm saying trusted? So this generation, 20 years old, 30 years old, teenagers, right? When they're not happy, they can complain to social media. So, and this is very easily, right? So during our time, when we want to complain to regulator, we have to write a letter, right? And 2 months down the road, then they will reply, maybe, right? Right now, they can just mention on Twitter, on IG, on Facebook, right? And everybody get their fires on, right? The CEO, WhatsApp you, hey, somebody mentioned us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, what are you going to do about it? And all hell break loose, right? So it has to be trusted, right? And when we talk about trusted, we need to talk about transparent, right? We all love to put that asterisk, right? Interest rate is 3%, then there's that asterisk, and when people need to read the terms and conditions and all that, right? We need to build that trust that, okay, my fee is 3%, and I only have this another fee of late fee. That's it. I don't have any other fee. Or even if I have any other fee, you don't have to read through the TNC to be able to understand what, and then later on you complain. So trusted, transparent, and instant. Now, the last one is about accessible. If I need to use your product, but I have to go to web browser, forget it. Right? Even if I want to use my mobile phone, it has to be one click away, right? During my time as a banker, I remember, right? Even if I can I used to have 100 fields to register credit cards. And when people challenge me to drop it into 30, 40 fields, I will say, no way, right? How do I know the mother's maiden name? How do I know the corporate address when I want to collect them later on and all that, right? But now, during my time in FinTech company in Dana, Indonesia, when we partner with a bank or with a P2P, we only have one click, literally one click registration button, right? How can you compete with that, right? So when some other banks launching 30-second approval, right? After I test, it's not 30-second approval, it's 30 seconds rejection, because 90% reject, 10% approve. Right? But FinTech is now already evolved as well, right? They can have one-click onboarding, right? And two-click payment. So I think is the mindset that we have to bring in terms of this localization and the question that you asked just now, Donald. That's my view.
Thank you very much. And I think right now I would, for now, at the time being, I'll wrap up the section, by thanking all the panelists here, giving very insightful things about, what you are doing from your company, as well as from geography standpoint on what's going on. But I would take this on the second part of this discussion, talking just using Brdgx as an example, because we are part of the accelerator program in the accelerator program with EthAum, but really to kind of to bring out a payment topic and to continue with an interaction where there's questions to me or questions back to the panel, and we will take it forward from here with a little bit of information that I'm going to share a little bit about Brdgx.
Thanks a lot, Donald, for moderating the panel so well. And obviously the insights that we gathered today are just fantastic. And obviously the diversity of the panelists is really interesting. So Donald, why don't we go ahead, pitch Brdgx solution to the panelists and get some real honest feedback without sugarcoating.
Thank you very much. So I'll move forward to talk just a little bit about how Brdgx simplify Asia payment. So our company started off just before COVID, and our vision and what we really want to do is to make payment smart, simple, and smooth by providing a treasury network for businesses in the Asian markets. What we do and what we really wanted to achieve is to provide a unified payment infrastructure in Southeast Asia and beyond. Now, as a startup, where we are right now, we focus back on the markets that we're familiar with, which is Southeast Asia. And it has been, as you can see from both the data and the growth in terms of the trends of trade, import, export, digital commerce, is all showing basically Southeast Asia as a whole has been a strong growing market because of digitization, because of e-commerce, because of various trades, as well as the growth of the SME segment. Now, what we're seeing, unfortunately, we're talking about why we are here in the market is that because the problem about access to Southeast Asia is still because of limited accessibility. It's a fragmented market just in Southeast Asia alone. And because of those, the transaction speed or even costs are slow and costly. Now, we're talking about overall, there has been the establishments of the key major economies between the US, Europe, and China, for example. But with Southeast Asia coming up or ASEAN coming up as a whole, getting access to this market is still very difficult. So that's why we came up as a startup to really look at from a B2B perspective, how we can provide basically a payment network or payment infrastructure that allows us to link up basically Southeast Asia and the rest of the world. Now, it's not going to be a long topic because for us here from a B2B perspective, we are a B2B solution. Not exactly in a way that you think that we are a B2B solution, for the SMEs and so on and so forth, because there's a long chain and there's a long, I call it a supply chain of activities that have to happen, even just in the payment space. So what we are trying to do here is to work with various solution providers, the banks, as well as service providers in the market to offer a solution that enable payment in an efficient and cost-saving way. Now, I'm just using this as an example. By connecting the Southeast Asian market to even on the scenario on payments to China, we are solving the problems that the existing solutions could not sing on a single platform to provide a solution that can access to multiple local currencies in terms of payment in the Southeast Asian market. And also in terms of the types of payments, whether supply payments, service payments to China because of various restrictions. And because the restriction in two endpoints is very difficult to optimize the transaction. And that's why we exist and we continue to be working with basically banking infrastructure or the banks locally, the payment service providers locally, to allow a multi-currency, local currency collection, FX optimization, and a multi-mode Chinese payment. And that we're talking about in terms of the enablement of this payment services or payment solutions to produce a strong, significant cost saving. And we are not talking about cost saving from a perspective, this is just cheaper. It's really about an enablement. And because of the enablement of B2B transactions and the transactions type that we can handle, we are producing that kind of effect by working with actually, in fact, all our speakers here are potential partners that we're talking about that we can work with from a technology standpoint, from an integration standpoint, from an endpoint standpoint with payment gateways, from a market support with the banks, as well as with the platforms and neobanks that we can actually using unified infrastructure to offer the solution to business clients. That's how we actually came up into the market as Brdgx, to provide a global access, a compliance solution, and an optimized transactional platform. So this is a little bit about Brdgx, and so far as a solution for Brdgx, We've been in the market since actually COVID time, bootstrapping as a company. And we look at ourselves as basically one of the payment service provider that's licensed in Hong Kong and Singapore currently. So this is a little bit of an introduction about ourselves, and would love to take in some questions. I mean, if we want to go into specifics, we're happy to talk about that. I'm also happy to talk about from a market perspective how we can address certain issues.
Thanks. Yeah, Thomas.
Yeah, I mean, so to begin, Donald, would you actually mind going back to the slide where you show
Sure.
all the different countries and currencies you're dealing with?
Yeah. Is this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of them kind of make the point. So from my perspective, it's a really interesting, compelling vision, right? And Aspire as a partner is of course making good use of Brdgx as well. I think from the perspective of company building and go to market, there's a lot of potential avenues for you to grow and expand, right? I mean, any one of these currency pairs could be pretty substantial, pretty lucrative. So I think the question for you is, how do you think about sequencing your growth and your expansion? And how do you decide which segments or which use cases you focus on first?
They're really a combination of it, because actually when you look at just this slide itself, from a Brdgx perspective, we are talking about already basically three main products. One is a payment collection product for Southeast Asia, from Southeast Asia. The other product is actually the payment solution to China. And the third is then combining the two endpoints to then provide an optimized transaction solution. Because ultimately, we all know from a treasury standpoint, or if we are a solution, we are a third party. We are a payment service provider. This is actually on top of what we can provide the access to be able to optimize our cash management and our transaction flow. But back to the point where Thomas is asking about the question, how do we prioritize? How do we go about doing it? I mean, ultimately, there's two main factors that we look at in terms of how we prioritize it. One is we look at basically where we can get to the market as fast as possible. In terms of, from this perspective, is in terms of the currencies that we can deal with, in terms of the partnerships that we can establish with the local service providers or the banks, and also the demand side. For example, we are actually right now, in addition to say that, I have basically one product is basically to allow us to access to different currencies. And we hear from the market, whether they are from Southeast Asia, whether they're from Greater China or from other parts of the world, there will be a priority from the customers. Which are the currencies or which are the markets they want to get access to first? And obviously, it really builds up to the fact that, it relates to which is the largest market in the economy. And always coming up is the likes of your Indonesia, in Vietnam, Thailand is really related to the population size, that we have to prioritize based on what the customers are looking on in terms of payment collection. But at the same time, it's also about access. It's about how fast we can basically work with the local partner to build up this opportunity. But on the other front, when we talk about opportunities, also about the China side, you'll be surprised that we are saying, what's the problem about making payments to China, for example? In fact, actually making payments to China is a very fragmented thing. It's not easy to deal with local currencies in China, trying to say that I want to make a payment to an individual versus a business, and what kind of businesses. That requires basically different expertise and compliance requirements in order to satisfy a product, what we call a solution on payment to China. And so in short, it's really talking about how we look at basically the demand and also where we can actually make that access happen.
I think that's very helpful. To elaborate a bit further, I mean, you've called out some of the industries or the business models you're dealing with here. I mean, again, any of these, merchant to supplier, e-commerce, logistics, travel payments could be a huge, humongous opportunity, right? And as a startup, you do need to prioritize. How are you looking at the market opportunity for each of these, and how do you think about potentially tailoring your product as well?
Yeah, so for us, I think right now, our priority currently is still very much on the e-commerce and trade segment. That's because if you talk about, because ultimately at the back of it, if you look at it, it's a cross-border solution. And where we see basically on the transaction flow and the fund flow, and is actually on the B2B perspective, is trade related. And whether it's import export or whether we put another layer on top of it, is e-commerce. And that's where we are actually seeing most of basically from a payments perspective is a payment collection from Southeast Asia, because the payment tool is actually to China to pay to the supplier. So this is one segment we were looking at. But the second segment that we're looking at is actually the travel segment. Something that's interesting because over the past quarter now, since Chinese New Year, I had the opportunity of basically moving or moving around in China a little bit, talking to our partners and the banks, and everyone is actually projecting tourism growth, outbound growth from China is increasing. What it also means is that the Chinese tourists are coming in, and they are, as a restart in terms of the travel journey, they are looking at closer base, meaning Southeast Asia or South Asia or overall Asian markets as a base where they will travel to. And that's where we are actually also seeing a opposite opportunity whereby payment coming out from China to pay for tourism receipts or to pay for tourism type of transactions is actually coming through to Southeast Asia. And this is something that actually we're building the distribution channel ourselves. And the third piece that I would not neglect is to say, basically, we talk about the AI and machine learning as well as the blockchain side of things. The Web3 side of things is coming, and I'm physically right now in Hong Kong. We are talking about from 1st of June, the regime or we call it the regulations is changing related to virtual asset. This is something that we're actually closely monitoring on how the guidelines and the regulations is changing to accommodate the involvement of the industry in the Web3 space. And that is going to affect how we can actually have a potential growth in that market segment as well.
We do look forward to working with you more on Web3, Donald.
Definitely. I mean, we are closely monitoring how this is evolving.
Okay, let's see what are the other questions.
Maybe from me, one question, Donald. So this is just 5 minutes, right? And I think it's not fair for you to be able to explain in deep details within just 5 minutes, right? But the fintech world, the startup world that we are having right now is no longer the same like 1, 2, 3 years ago, right? So now everybody's talking about revenue, everybody's talking about break-even point and all that, right? And I don't see it yet, at least for now. How are you able to satisfy your stakeholders or your potential stakeholders on that space? Can you elaborate more?
Just to clarify, Christian, you are talking about how does the revenue growth is going to be achieved?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. How are you going to be positive, right? If I'm being very upfront. When? How? What?
I would say basically we're looking at two things. I mean, from a payment perspective, we're not in the financing side, but from payments perspective, we're really talking always about transaction volume. And ultimately, how is it going to drive our net revenue? So these are the parameters we look at ourselves as well. So it is challenging, but as a startup, that we actually have our first full year of operation since 2020 during the COVID period when it started. So it has been difficult, but as the market is opening up, because first of all, we start with a relatively lower base in terms of the expectation or in terms of volume that we have. And in terms of basically where we're focusing on in the B2B segment in Southeast Asia and China, we are still basically seeing a strong corridor transaction volume growth opportunity that a lot of our partners are asking us for solutions. We are not here to say that we are actually just giving another solution that everyone is doing, but a lot of our partners, platforms, as well as even banks are saying that, we do need unified solution for payment to China, for example. Separately, is also a solution that that the partners, as well as our channel partners and direct customers, are looking for in solving the problem about payment collection from Southeast Asia. So these two segments itself, we see basically the potential volume growth. That's number one. But number two, then the question is that, okay, how about your revenue and how about your margin? That is going to come, but we are talking about, if you look at the slide that I'm talking about earlier, when I mentioned about cost saving of over 70%, is really about, first of all, enablement as a product, but also about optimization in the fact that we are able to say that, currently, how does it work? You have a high cost of making payment to China because a lot of rejection rates, a lot of costs because the banks are saying that I can solve the problem, but actually underneath, there's still a lot of costs involved to make the payment to China. Secondly, in terms of payment collection from Southeast Asia, when we work with basically an aggregated payment gateway, or let's say a card solution, that's where we can actually collect the payment. There is still basically a high percentage cost on transaction costs for us to settle overseas. So overall, when we are able to provide a combined solution, join together to provide for this intra-Asia corridor, we do see the percentage of your 3 to 4% in terms of cost moving down to below 1%. Now, and it also actually takes a stronger effort for us to even partner with Christian yourself, for example, in Indonesia, for it to work, because it would not then be a solution whereby we work with just a general payment gateway or a general payment solution to say that, I have the solution, but it's a high cost solution, but it's not an effective solution. We do want to, on a local perspective, to work with the best local partner, as well as our best local partner in China, to provide this corridor that we can bridge it. That's why we call it Brdgx.
I see. So okay. So following up on that question, Donald, and so nowadays the source of the funding is not only coming from the venture, right? We start seeing funds coming in from the old conglomerates family because they have the third generation, fourth generation, and all that, right? And sometimes, the grandfather or the dad is still involving as well in the decision, right? And if I can bring you a use case of, for example, a conglomerate family whereby their forte is on the palm oil, for example, right? There's lots of that kind of family here in Indonesia, right? And you try to convince them to invest in your company, right? And I understand it's not going to be 5 minutes, it's not going to be even half hour, right? But how do you get their attention when they ask you bluntly, okay, Donald, I understand a bridge between local collection and China and all that, right? But at what time, at what condition will we have the flipping points and you start becoming positive? And you need to be able to answer that and get that attention within the next 5 minutes, right?
It's a good question. Something that we would like to get an answer on as well. But what I can say right now at this point of time is that, for the past 2-3 years, like I mentioned, we are still bootstrapping, from the founders. And we actually managed ourselves over the past 2.5, am I right? Close to 3 years now, to get ourselves to basically a cash flow balance level. So as a day one, when a new investor come in, let's say if we're raising fund, for example, first of all, we are not on a super burn on ourselves, and we really manage it. But again, if we are fundraising, or if we're going into the market, is really about expanding our capability. Let's say into Indonesia, let's say into the Philippines, or let's say even into Malaysia and Vietnam. And I think the value we bring is to say that we are managing it right now, but the kind of fund or the kind of the capital injection that's coming to us is with a clear ROI that we can show on what are we spending on, and what kind of growth and what kind of margin are we getting from each of the markets. And if I were to kind of raise fund from Indonesia right now, working with the family, is to actually offer the value on how our solution can offer the value to the family business themselves.
If
Thank you.
I make a comment over here, we evaluate thousands of startups every year, right? And obviously we look at their revenue numbers, how much they have spent to achieve those kind of revenue numbers. And when I look at Brdgx and compare these startups with Brdgx, what Brdgx has been able to achieve while staying completely bootstrapped in terms of revenue, many other startups can't even achieve that with tens of millions of dollars of funding. So in terms of staying cost efficient, staying resource efficient, staying positive, I think Donald and Thomas have done fantastic job. And they were not even thinking about raising earlier because they were doing really great while staying bootstrapped. But now they are mulling over raising from VCs or from family offices. And I'm sure by looking at their numbers, these family offices or VCs will be positively stunned. That's what I can tell you. I won't share any number at the moment on this session, so we can have a separate session to talk about this.
Happy to hear that. Would love to explore or at least get a view of what that number looks like. But cost of capital is high, really, really high right now. So to me, I think it stunts any innovation. I mean, I don't want to use the word innovation because it could be misunderstood. I would say that, every product or every product in this case has a roadmap, and your time to reach a certain roadmap, certain milestone in a roadmap, to me, as somebody who would want to seriously invest, I would question that. I would also say that it's very niche from how I look at it. It's something that solves a specific need in the market and has a persona of, and I'm sure you've done that exercise in terms of who you're going to talk to, who are going to drive your revenue. Now, focus on that is important, and assurance on how that would be achieved. I'm not hearing any sales-driven approach of what is your acquisition. I mean, there is a cost of acquisition of, these customers in Philippines that you want, and Thailand, Vietnam, whatever it might be. But I'm not understanding the how of it. And so it makes sense if one looks at it a little more deeper. If that is a kind of I wouldn't say a showstopper. You're doing good here so far, and I wish you well in your journey. But two things that I would look at very clearly is how much it costs me, because the cost is really expensive today. So does it really make sense if I have no returns? Or then this could be a masterpiece, and it could be like, let me put in 30 billion and buy this thing because in the next 2 weeks it's going to become the next biggest thing in the world. So what I'm trying to say is that that part of the story is not coming out to me. If I was, I don't think A, B, C, and at least till B, those round of investments are suitable in today's environment because you tend to lose a pound of flesh. But if you look at growth, both from a scaling perspective of the product, but also from a scaling perspective of revenue, which is what Christian brought out. How are you going to explain to a family office who does not understand much, where those revenues are? I mean, of course, a family office will have an investment manager, will have a legal manager, somebody who handles their wealth, and they would be able to simplify it for them. But to somebody who has been in the financial services industry for a very long time and in the tech space and an investor, I'm sold on the idea, but it's the wrong time. It would have been great in 2020. Yeah, that was a great time. Interest rates were low. One could bet on it. And you chose to bootstrap. Was it a good strategy or not a good strategy at that point of time? Maybe it was not a choice. Take my words with, the totality of it. Maybe it was not a choice then. And you did take the option of bootstrapping. But how would this be sustained with high inflation and high, central bank interest rates, which then results into equity, and people are moving away from equity and going into treasuries. I mean, I can just understand a family office thinking like that. But you could really cross that winning mile if you could articulate that my next 3-year journey, this is what it looks like. And, capital always does not have to come in one shot. It comes in stages as well. So even if there's an allocation of, okay, we look at 20 million and for the next 3 years, but it doesn't have to be 20 million today. So how would that, a little more clarity around that when you're investing? Reach out to me at some point. I could just speak with you for an hour. Pankaj, you can arrange that. But I think point I'm trying to make is that it needs to be sold a little better. I can hear the how we technologists end up selling a technology solution just because of the features of that technology. That this is a problem statement and this is a problem it solves. Payments into China is very difficult. Probably UPI integration with FAST has made payments real time in India, but in China it's still a big problem. Conversion is a problem. You can earn money through these lines and you need to start thinking that. So if you have a board that is advising you on what your revenue model should be or what they could be, and so on and so forth, So it's a conversation, but a little more give and take. Meaning, I need to know a little more, and I could give you a little more. Is what I'll leave it at.
Thanks a lot, Samir. You're always very kind, very gracious with your support. So really appreciate that.
Now, these are really, really important words for us, to as a startup to learn from how an investor look at things. And the good news is that actually those information are also prepared. It's more like today is really more on the product side that we are presenting, but it's important. It's definitely important for us to actually explain how the next 2-3 years is going to look like with our strategy as well as in terms of how the numbers are going to look like.
The thumb rule is anytime you're pitching, I mean, as a CXO person, right? Anytime you're having a conversation, it just doesn't, don't limit yourself to the value of what we do, but also in terms of who we are as a company and how we're going to make money and why that makes a difference. Don't take examples. OpenAI was supposed to be a charity, non-profit organization. They very quickly turned into a profitable organization. And that articulation should be done at the right time. But that's how you create value. That's how you give the sense that you also have a business purpose besides solving a problem around technology. I mean, there are several digital banks, payment companies, and sometimes when I sit on their boards, we have this conversation that yes, we are doing financial inclusion. Anybody can open an account from India, probably, or Indonesia before coming into Singapore, and then carry it safe and then make those payments through QR codes and so on and so forth. But as someone who runs a company as well, it's important that where my company will go and what directions it will take in a time when it's uncertain. And that's why I use the term unfortunate today, because we didn't predict this. I mean, some of us did when the when the Feds raised the interest rates in 2021. But it's keeping all that information and being able to articulate that in a holistic manner. You never know. A customer becomes an investor. That's happened.
Thank you. Those are really good points. Thanks a lot.
Okay, anything from Nitin before we move on to the audience?
Well, nothing. I just wish Donald all the best. This is a good solution, I see. I mean, we've seen similar example in India as well. TerraPay is another company. I'm not sure, Donald, if you heard about it, but that does similar, and contrary to my belief, it's doing really well. So I believe that, Donald, you have hit the right spot, and wish you all the best.
I think for us, just to add on that, we know some of the players in different regions, but as where we are right now or where we're based in, we can't cover the whole world. So we continue to basically look at, the regions that we're not covering, to be able to bring out the solution together with different banking partners as well.
Sure.
Sounds good. So that's it. Again, really appreciate all the panelists for amazing insights that you shared during this panel. Thanks to Donald for moderating this panel so well, and obviously taking all the questions, all the feedback so positively. I'm sure that we will be able to learn from these feedback, improve and grow. Obviously, we need to schedule deep dives with all the panelists to make sure we are able to find synergies, explore synergies, and help each other in the longer term. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that. But yeah, thanks a lot, everybody, for joining today's session. Really appreciate your time and insights. And let's reconnect.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Pankaj.
Thank you, everyone.
Pankaj,
Bye.
thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Nitin,
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thomas, Donald, hi, and we should catch up at some point. I mean, guys who are in Singapore.
It's very kind of all of you joining the panel.
Probably, I'll have to travel to Jakarta at some point and catch up with you, but we should gather around there.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.